Prime Big Deal Days is here.
Woohoo!
Which can lead to involuntary deal squeals, like the classic deal on a new blender squeal.
Yeah!
Save big this Prime Big Deal Days, on now.
Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of Master Leaf Theater presented by Islanders Anxiety. I am your host, Dan Saracini. Joining me, as always, is my friend and co-host, Michael Lieboff. Mike, we have some wonderful selections tonight from many in the Leafs media universe, all of which focused on the momentous event from last week of John Tavares giving the Maple Leafs captaincy to Austin Matthews in what will surely go down as an incredibly embarrassing moment for the former Islanders captain. We've had some time to look at these things. We pulled a bunch here that are really, really cool. How are you feeling about the selection of readings that we will be having tonight?
I'm so excited. I give you a lot of credit because you had this plan came to you during our last Master Leaf Theater last week, and as soon as the white smoke billowed out of the Ford Performance Center, I was like ready to get back into it. I just wanted to get right back into it. But I think what your plan here really worked to give. I think, as you said, the dust has to settle a bit.
Yeah.
Because all day today, all week, I've been thinking about this episode and really excited all day today. I've been really excited to get into this. I also want to say thank you to everyone who's listening to this for subscribing and all that, because just having the opportunity to talk about these Maple Leafs writers and this entire situation in the way that we do and have an audience for it, it really brightened my day today looking forward to this. So it really provided me a pep in my step. I can't wait to get into these selections, which are so good that we had to pull a little trick of our own.
Yes. So after Mike and I went off the air last time, we were talking about this episode, and we decided that we needed a voice to come in to really lend some gravitas and some drama to the selections that we knew were going to happen. I mean, we recorded that on Monday, right? Was it Monday or Tuesday? And the press conference hadn't actually happened yet. So we knew that this stuff was going to come out, and we knew we were going to want a particular voice to bring these things to life. And fortunately, we know somebody, and so do you. He's a 2-time guest on Weird Islanders, the podcast. He's an actor, a podcaster, a writer, a producer, and an all-around great guy, and one of our favorites. He is Michael Paul Smith. Michael, how are you doing this evening?
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to have you on. You bring such gravitas, like I said, to the proceedings. Also, you have your own recording equipment, which makes this always sound so lush and so wonderful as well. Are you ready to bring these selections to life in the way that you can, and the way that our audience, as a listener and as a fan, our audience wants this stuff. So are you ready for this monumentous job that you have in front of you?
I have gone through the full slate of Ron Burgundy vocal warm-ups before we started recording. How now, brown cow? So yeah, I'm ready.
Excellent. I'm so excited. My favorite thing about this, by the way, is we don't have to do a whole real intro, because we did it already. We did our whole last episode. So if you didn't listen to our last episode of Islanders Anxiety, which goes through the entire kind of Tavares, media leadership changeover, go back and listen to that now. But I'm sure you already have. So we can get right into this, because you already know where we're going with this. We're reading selections from articles about the Maple Leafs that we have chosen, again, for dramatic effect. And where else could we possibly begin but with the Jane Austen of Master Leaf Theater, one Luke Fox Jukebox, who did not disappoint. He has been at the forefront of this. He's been going crazy here, writing his ass off about this thing that I'm sure he's, going to memorialize. This is what he wants, on his tombstone. He's going to have all these great things about the stuff that he wrote about the time Austin Matthews became the Leafs captain. And we have a perfect opening thing here. So we're going to have Michael read them, and then we're going to discuss the articles themselves. So Michael, if you would please read for us the first section here on our document, and our the first excerpt on this very special episode of Master Leaf Theater.
With pleasure. The first time Austin Matthews sported a sweater with the Toronto Maple Leafs logo emblazoned on the chest and a C stitched below the left shoulder was 5 years ago. It was at the 2019 All-Star Weekend in San Jose, where fans voted him the game's most dangerous shooter captain of his division. Watching the festivities from afar, an 8-year-old hockey-loving boy in Toronto turned to his father and said, "That C looks pretty good on Matthews, eh, Dad?" The idea has been floating in the Hogtown ether for years, this inevitable coronation of the man fast-tracking his way to GLOAT, greatest Leaf of all time status, as the dressing room's official leader. And on Wednesday morning at Real Sports Bar and Grill, during a staged letter-passing ceremony smashed right next to a soon-to-be busy sports retail outlet, the 26-year-old Matthews will be named 26th captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, succeeding John Tavares.
That is incredible, and what an what a lead to start with. My God. So this is a classic. This is a classic of the sports journalism genre. This goes back to Babe Ruth, and kids like watching the Yankees play through a hole in the fence at Yankee Stadium, wherever it was at that time. The little kid looking up to his sports hero and thinking, "That's the man I want to be." If you're old like me, you may remember an old Coke commercial where this little kid meets Mean Joe Green of the Steelers, and he gives him a Coke, and Joe Green gives him a jersey, and he's like, "Thanks, Mean Joe." Which
immortalized in a Family Guy bit as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. It's a classic commercial. This is right in that wheelhouse. So, congrats to Luke Fox Jukebox for going to this, this classic thing. Before we analyze this, are we all in agreement that this child definitely did not exist?
No,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is completely fabricated. This child who said that's really...
No, he existed, but he existed in Luke Fox's his soul. Like it was himself projecting his own 8-year-old Leaf fandom that he still has.
Yes.
Oh God, I'm telling you this in just the sheer literal sense of the word did exist. The kid did not exist.
Right.
But if you ask Luke Fox Jukebox if that kid existed, he's going to say yes, because he saw that kid that day. He did. He just, no matter what, he will go to his grave saying, "No, that kid existed. I witnessed the whole thing," but it was really his own id projecting out one of those old scenes from in the Scrubs finale when JD pulls down the thing and the projection screen shows his future or whatever.
Right.
Like that, the opposite of that. This is
Mm-hmm.
and also how long in the past did Luke Fox Jukebox decide when Austin Matthews gets the C, I'm gonna make up this story about it?
I mean, I would assume that he's been thinking about writing that since 2019, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the
right.
obvious thing. So, I mean, this article here is really full of these kinds of things. I mean, Michael, what did you think reading this? My other favorite thing is that the Real Sports Bar and Grill. So we have a new location now for us to project these things. We went from the Ford, obviously you've got it's not Air Canada Center, it's the Scotiabank Arena, Ford Performance Center, and now the Real Sports Bar and Grill. But what did you make of this? What were you picturing as you read this article? Just to yourself, not just now, but as in, Luke Fox was he kind of pining away or typing away like an old timey journalist, or was he kind of floating through space? It's the Field of Dreams thing where he's coming out of the cornfield. And
yeah, I think definitely the latter. He captures the drama.
Yes.
He does. It's as an actor, it's a pleasure to read. It is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But yeah, I love the phrase too. There's so much here that we could. It's so much. First of all, GLOAT, the greatest Leaf of all time. I was reading the comments in this, so this is obviously from Sportsnet, and some people were just like, "Come on, give me a break," But then during a staged letter passing ceremony, smashed right next to a soon-to-be busy sports retail outlet, which basically is him saying, we had this wonderful ceremony, and Toronto is a bustling commercial destination for all of your, business needs or whatever. So
Yeah, he got a hold of some sales projections just before writing the
Yes.
article. That's
Right. So,
very handy.
Well,
So
I
now-
wonder,
yeah.
was he do you think he was first online too to get the jersey? It's for,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
for my kids, my 8-year-old
Right.
kid.
It's funny you mention that, because this isn't the only jersey that comes up in these wonderful stories. And we turn back to another Luke Fox Jukebox article. It's a different article. This is a separate article. This is not the same thing. It's a different Luke Fox Jukebox article. This one's called How John Tavares Handled Passing the Maple Leafs Captaincy to Austin Matthews. And this is more focused a little bit on the Tavares side of things. Let's have Michael read this, and then we'll discuss what it is, because I had to read this like maybe 3 or 4 times to make sure I knew what I was reading. So, Michael, if you would please read our second selection here, How John Tavares Handled Passing the Maple Leafs Captaincy to Austin Matthews by Luke Fox.
After he kind of let me know and everything, I told him I was like shaking. I had chills, Matthews said. There's really no words to explain what it felt like. It was just very humbling. It's a special honor. Just as it was for Tavares, the rare hometown kid who chose to play for Toronto in his prime, when so many other high-profile free agents did not. But it also makes sense that Tavares, the metronome of professionalism, wanted to save some pride himself, as his own parents and children and wife watched him hand over the sea from the front row. This decision is definitely not about whether I've succeeded or failed. Whether I'm capable or that my time has passed, Tavares asserted. I feel stronger than ever in my ability to compete, play at a high level, and make significant contributions through my leadership.
Wow. Okay. So, this is, again, incredibly ridiculous. The Metronome of Professionalism, by the way, is the easy title for this episode and should go down in history in Maple Leafs lore. Mike, what's your favorite part of this section here? Is it the Metronome of Professionalism? Is it the rare hometown kid who chose to play for Toronto?
That's the part that jumped out at me originally. But this is the thing about our guy here, as you could say, the Jane Austen of Master Leaf Theater. Luke Fox Jukebox. He's like your favorite band, because you think you've got a favorite song or even like a favorite part of a song, and the next thing you know, next time you listen to it, you appreciate another part of it. And this is what keeps happening with these articles. Like the first one, I'm like, oh, there's just nothing better than this little kid that he fabricated out of thin air. But the rest of it is just so incredible that like it's that, yeah, sure, that's like the easy thing to pick out as my favorite part. But there's so much of this nuance that we've come to know from reading out his articles over the past couple seasons that like every word just is poignant. Like everything that he writes is he sits down at his computer and it's as if he's writing about some massive moment in history, which I mean, this is for him, obviously, and that's why it bleeds through like this. But that part about him being the rare hometown kid to choose to play for Toronto,
Right.
when so many others did not, it's such a bold-faced fucking lie that I can't. So he writes this whole thing, and it's like dripping with drama and all the thing, and then he just lies to you in the middle of it, and you're like, whoa, like this is taking a sharp turn into something else. Because is he? Can he just say Steven Stamkos is like the only one I could really think of that turned down the Leafs boldly here, like or like made a decision. Are you going to Toronto or are you staying with your other team? It was Stamkos and then Tavares. And it happens all the time. Like they sign these guys all the time.
Yeah.
It's like we talk about this in this Tavares saga for years about how they are having their cake and eating it too by getting to play this rare, they get to be the rare, richest franchise in hockey, biggest market in hockey, biggest television drawer in hockey. Yet they're the small, scrappy upstarts who don't have free agents would never want to come to Toronto. Like what are you talking about? I think you're talking about the Islanders, man. Like, like what?
Well, like, I
What is
guess
going
if you're
on here?
talking free agents, I mean, do we think that they're like still pissed off that Wayne Gretzky didn't sign there? Because like they've had a lot of Toronto people play for the Leafs, they just didn't come as free agents. Like Doug Gilmour was a trade, Wendell Clark was drafted, that sort of thing. But the other thing too is it's just like nobody's going to give you this. Like nobody's going to give you that rare hometown kid thing when nobody plays for their hometown here. Like it just never happens. Like I'm sorry, Charlie McAvoy and Adam Fox aren't playing for the Islanders, right? They're playing for somebody else. So this is kind of crazy to me. But I'll get to another Leafs thing in a second. But Michael, am I correct in assuming, based on how you read that selection beautifully, I may add,
Thank you.
that your favorite part might be the Tavares quote there about this decision is definitely not about whether I've succeeded or failed. Is that true?
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And because of Michael Leboff, I started listening to Kipper and Bourne as soon as they got bounced.
Yeah.
And when they got bounced, they were saying like, there's no way he's going to be here. He's leaving. And if he doesn't leave, they're going to take his captaincy away. And then who's going to stick around after that? And then here he is going, this decision is definitely not about whether I've succeeded or failed.
So funny.
It's just like, you can't make this up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that it's a prepared statement too. Like,
right. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
He gets ahead of it by preparing his own statement. This is as like if you were a kid who got in trouble or like failed a test or something, or you didn't get into the school you wanted or something. I don't know. Like it's so funny. Like, no, this isn't about succeeding or failing. This is something completely different. This isn't the most embarrassing part of the whole thing, but it's pretty close for me.
I'm glad you brought up the prepared statement. So I was listening to the JD Bunkus podcast, I guess from this time, and he had Sam McKee on, who is the producer for Kipper and Bourne. And I'm happy to report that they're still both just as cynical and down on this team as ever. So if you haven't listened to it yet, I recommend you do, because it's really, really very entertaining. And the first thing they talk about about this press conference is how weird it was that Tavares had like this sort of crumpled notes out of his sports jacket, to read in front of this assembled crowd of media that really wasn't anything that he hadn't said 100 times before. Like, it wasn't like it didn't sound like anything you would have had to have written down to just say if you were a human being, which the jury's a little bit still out on whether Tavares is actually human or not. But like, this is that whole thing. And like, there was so much, this is just one line, but apparently there was more of this of like, it's not my failure. It's, about Austin kind of coming and being a leadership,
very
being a leader.
Disgraced politician. That was the analogy. Like disgraced like CEO or something. Right. Well, someone got like quietly pushed aside maybe at your company, and they're like, oh, by the way, Bo doesn't work here anymore. We'd like to thank him for his time, and he prepared this statement, and it's like, this isn't a reflection on me or the work I've done, but I have to go now.
Yeah. Well, it's very like massaged PR, meaning like, don't say I failed. Make this about Austin. And so I think that might have been why he wrote it down, because if anything, he would have been like, I blew it. It starts with me, which of course is, that's the phrase that's really going to go on his tombstone. And, he had to make sure to focus on Austin.
There's a key word here too that I've focused in on. Mm-hmm. So as Michael did brilliantly, now becoming the second actor to read John Tavares prose outside of whoever starred in the off-Broadway play about Tavares. The word definitely, I think, is hilarious here. So the decision is definitely not. It becomes very, I think you should leave. We're all trying to find the guy who did this here. It's definitely not about whether I've succeeded or failed. It's definitely not. And he's looking at his kids and his dad and his mom and his wife are there. And he's like, don't any of you think that this is, I haven't let you guys down. I promise.
John Tavares in a hot dog costume. It's very funny. Also, the other thing they joked about on the Bunkus podcast was how Matthews kept talking about the chills he had, and Sam McKee was like, "Hey, he was a really chilly guy. Like he was just absolutely overcome with chills." But we're gonna move on to another legend of Master Leaf Theater, and that is Chris Johnston of The Athletic, of course, the main Maple Leafs writer or whatever he is over there. Thank you, by the way, to Luke Fox Jukebox for those wonderful selections. But we're gonna move on now. So Johnston had a great article here. Listen, I don't subscribe to The Athletic. I don't know how many people out there do anymore, But you definitely get your money's worth from old CJ this week because he really turned it out for the Tavares presser. And this is where we get very strange signature moment from this press conference. And so the title of this one is John Tavares' graceful exit as Maple Leafs captain could lead to a longer stay in Toronto. We'll get to that part in a second. But Michael, if you will, please read part one of a two-part Chris Johnston selection here on Master Leaf Theater.
Having the captain's C taken off his sweater must have felt like taking the butt end of a hockey stick to the chest for John Tavares. No matter how many different angles you try to see it from, no matter how favorably the facts and timelines and chain of conversations might be rearranged, there's simply no way to spin the Toronto Maple Leafs decision as a positive outcome for the well-respected forward. Yet, in facing a difficult situation with a high degree of selflessness, Tavares may have ultimately started down a new path toward personal fulfillment. He displayed an unusual grace during Wednesday's official captaincy handoff to Austin Matthews, hitting the right notes in prepared remarks and posing for photos on stage with his teammate. Tavares and his wife Irene and parents Barbara and Joe watching from the front row and even secured a couple number 34 sweaters, each freshly adorned with a C over the heart for sons Jason Axton. That was my one request today, said Tavares, for them to get a couple of jerseys, have Austin sign them, and add to their collection.
Okay.
There's too much here.
It's too much. It's too much. That was fantastic.
We do these quite a bit now. Maybe
Yeah.
prorate out once a month.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. Sometimes, like this one, I can feel it like a blanket. I could. It's like weighing on me. I cannot believe this is real.
Right.
Is this? It reads like one of those self-help guru books. Like he's like pitching how to sell you on becoming a more confident person or something. I cannot. I want to talk to the editors here and just be like, when you were reading this, what I'm like weird. I'm emotional because, and not like, oh, this is making me emotional. It's so touching. I'm emotional because I'm a little frightened.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. There's so much here to reckon with emotionally. By the way, the editor is James Myrtle, so he ain't going to change the damn word of this whole thing. But the thing that stuck out to me, and this was a nugget that came up in almost every single article about this I read for good reason, was that his kids were in the audience wearing Austin Matthews jerseys, which to me reads as unbelievably cruel to everybody involved. But what's even funnier is I went back and listened to last week's episode that we did, and you and I completely forgot about this. This is what happens when you record late at night. I had completely forgot that we actually joked about this at one point, saying how awful that would be and how embarrassing it would be for him. And then they went ahead and did it. Here's that clip, by the way. We'll see. We'll see how this all turns out. Hopefully it turns out absolutely terribly for John Tavares, and this is a good step in that direction.
Do you think he'll have his family there? Do you think his kids will be on the stage?
If they are, they should be wearing Austin Matthews jersey.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. So that to me was completely nuts. Like, if I were him, and I just, again, he may or may not be a robot, I don't know, but like if I looked down and I saw my kids, now listen, he obviously, I'm joking from 50,000 miles away, but like, I don't know, man, that would really feel weird. Like his parents would feel weird. Like I don't know. I mean, I don't know what his relationship is to Austin Matthews, but that would be very, very strange. Michael, what did you think of this selection? Again, now we're getting a little bit closer to the epicenter here of like maybe trying to read Tavares' thoughts a little bit. More so than anybody else. So, like, where are you coming out on this article here?
I mean, it's not a failure. It's a new path toward personal fulfillment.
That's some Tony Robbins shit right there.
It's
right?
unbelievable. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
That is by far my favorite quote.
Oh,
It's so delightful.
Yeah, really.
it's
What happened to
else.
I thought Toronto was this tough market. What happened to all these tough
That's what
writers?
and they all
Don't
say
they
it on every
frighten
podcast. They're like, "Oh, in this market."
Right.
Don't they
Yeah.
frighten everyone away with their toughness? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
where's the
Yeah.
toughness?
Yeah.
No,
Nope.
they're this is
Right.
I don't even it's so hard to even talk about this because like I'm having like an out of body experience reading it because like obviously Michael's very talented at this stuff too, so it adds and Dan, you do a great job when you read it, but like you're taking it to another level of drama
Mm.
when we bring in an actor to read it, right?
Mm.
And it's still not even there. Like
Right.
like it's this is so dramatic about something that should not be when the Nashville Predators name their new captain,
Nah.
there's
Yeah.
gonna be nothing about personal fulfillment. There's no 8-year-olds imagined out of the dust
Right.
from 5 years ago. A now 13-year-old is. I wonder if there was, if that person was real. They're like, huh, Luke Fox Jukebox is talking about me. Remember that, Dad? When I said this
Yeah.
is this
Yeah.
it's so it's Shakespearean. It's more operatic. It's like it's very. It's so weird, and I love that as someone who writes as a big part of my job. Everything that you get drilled into is like that people tell you is brevity is very important, right?
Mm.
This sentence could have been 6 words long.
Mm.
It could have been, Tavares showed a high degree of selflessness, which right away still would be like high degree of selflessness, and he goes on to make it about a chakra. We're getting into like Buddhist stuff here about John Tavares handing over the captaincy. It's
it's funny too because again, I also listened to another JD Bunkus podcast today with James Myrtle, who I just mentioned, and they go on, and it's Myrtle. I don't know, man. He feels like it sounds like he'd want to be anywhere else other than talking about this stuff, but I'm not sure where else he would want to be. But at one point they get to the inevitable. This always comes up, like when people talk about it, captains of anything. It always gets to the point of like, well, I mean, who even knows how important being a captain even is these days? Like, what are you even doing out there? Like, so on one hand, we have a new path towards personal fulfillment. And on the other hand, we have like, I mean, what are these guys really doing anyway? So it's like,
Queen Elizabeth stuff. But you want to know how important the captaincy was when it was announced that John Tavares was becoming the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Pierre LeBrun had an epileptic meltdown onto his keyboard.
Caps.
Yeah,
exactly.
so there's clear when it depends on the situation, right? Like when, like I said, when the Nashville Predators make their name captain, it's just a very symbolic, like hollow thing, and this person just going to organize Halloween party or whatever.
look at our own team. Like Anders Lee is entering. Well, he's got like 2 years left on his deal, and let's assume that he doesn't resign, or maybe they even trade him or buy him out or something at some point. Something the Islanders are going to have to name a new captain. What kind of personal, path to fulfillment do we think they're going to talk about, Bo Horvat or Matt Barzal being on, when Noah Dobson, when that happens.
Right.
So,
and whose kids are going to be wearing.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. If Bo Horvat's kids are wearing Anders Lee jerseys, it'd be really funny to see that written about. But anyway. Okay. But CJ, again, he gives you your money's worth. And so this continues. It's a very long article. And we get to the part that, was mentioned in the title, which is, would this lead to a Tavares extension? I'm going to have a little bit more of that when we get to the end of our readings here. So just hang on tight. But Michael, if you will, please read part 2 of Chris Johnston's lengthy article here at From the Athletic.
In addition to conversations with Tree Living, Tavares hosted Leafs president Brendan Shanahan in his backyard to discuss the transition. He phoned Matthews in late July to offer some words of encouragement and his blessing, and even reached out to teammates Mitch Marner and Morgan Riley to let them know what was happening before the news got out publicly. Faced with circumstances that must have stung him personally, Tavares responded by making sure everyone around him was comfortable. While he's been eligible to sign an extension since July 1st, there hasn't been much in the way of talks with Leafs management to this point. Those discussions were kept aside while the captaincy situation was worked through. However, there's still more than a month remaining until training camp opens, and there's an expectation the sides will touch base in the near future. I want to stay, said Tavares. It's my desire to stay, but I think it's best that those things are kind of kept behind closed doors. When the time comes, it'll be addressed. To what degree the organization shares that desire remains to be seen.
Again, just so I'm clear, we are all having a collective deja vu experience right here, right? Like,
Yeah,
we've
it's
heard
odd
it.
that it's not mentioned. Yeah.
No, yeah, like we've heard these exact words come out of this man's face before.
Yep.
I didn't make that up. Like,
And there's a backyard being talked about as well.
Right.
No swimming pool, but I'm assuming the swimming pool was there.
oh yeah,
Oh, it's there.
yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
looming in the background.
I mean,
It's in the room with me right now.
like, again, Monica, you did a fantastic job, but like when I read those words, I want to stay, it's my desire to stay, I feel the bile like building up in my throat
Mhm.
because I've seen those exact words. I think at one point he said, I want to win here in another article. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on a second. What's going through your mind as you read this kind of in the character of John Tavares? Like, what are you thinking about that Islanders thing? Do you think he's thinking about his Islanders tenure and what he said during that whole free agency season?
I honestly think he's thinking, don't make the same mistake you made.
Probably.
And much like his captaincy, he's failing.
Yeah.
He's saying the same shit.
Yeah.
But I think it's on his mind. I think he's saying, like, don't
Sure.
overpromise. I don't know if he asked not to be traded or whatever, but don't let that shit get out. Just,
exactly.
Keep it close to the vest.
Right.
Oh,
But
God.
yeah, I mean, he has to be but I feel like, again, for the third time, that's just the software that's been downloaded. It hasn't been updated. There's no new drivers, like, in that section there. It just is what it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mike, I mean, what do you make of this? Like, it's just everything about this again is fantastic. The backyard, the calling of Marner and Riley,
making sure everyone else is comfortable.
making sure. I can imagine him being like, "Oh, you want some lemonade? You all right? Do you want another different chair? That one's a little wobbly." No, I'm comfortable, John. I'm really comfortable.
Oh, hey, Mitch.
Yeah.
Just want to tell you that I'll be handing over the C to Austin. Why are you grittying on the FaceTime right now? Yeah, this is what makes me mad. Like that, the part one of CJ's epic here is makes me feel uncomfortable, squirmy a bit. This one makes me mad, and it reminds me of a time where one of the only times in Master Leaf Theater where you're much better at playing behind the fourth wall, Dan, than I am. I usually have like mini breakdowns as I'm reading these things, and Mike is obviously doing a fantastic job of not while we're cracking up. But there was one time where you did break the fourth wall, Dan, when I think it was CJ mentioned how Tavares like took pitches from the Bruins, the Sharks, and the Stars, and you were like, really? Just those three teams?
Yeah.
This reminds me of that situation because, as Mike said, how is he not just being like, we've heard these words from Tavares before, by the way, in a situation where he didn't stay with the team that he said he wanted to stay with, and there was the same backyard mentioned, and but yeah, this is this.
Yeah. At no point in any of the articles I read, by the way, did the words New York Islanders and captaincy come up at all. Now, I'm not saying they necessarily needed to, but you'd think that they would, right? This isn't the first time this man has captained a hockey team.
He's been a captain. He's been captain of a hockey team, barring that first year of the Leafs. He was basically a captain for what, 9 out of the last 10 years?
Pretty much, yeah.
Or something like that.
Like he was like an assistant. He was like an alternate captain, like I think in year 3 with the Islanders. He was like captain in year 5, I think.
Right.
Because Mark Streit was the captain.
It was after Streit, right. Yeah.
And
so
then,
like he's
6 years or 5 years with the Leafs. So like 10, basically 9 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically a decade. This guy's been a captain for a decade. And nobody ever mentions that.
Right.
That this is the first time that he was not a captain of the team he was captain before he deserted them, and now this time he's getting the C deserted from himself. Yeah, but none of that comes up. It's just been washed from history because this was his fate. His fate was always to end up as the captain. And I do want to bring up one tweet from our buddy Sean Cuthbert where he was like, I'm pretty sure this wasn't what he was dreaming about in those bed
Yeah.
sheets, this
Yeah.
situation. But once again, that part of it is also very carefully handled. Like CJ in the first part is like, yeah, this isn't, obviously this isn't what Tavares wanted, but it's really about personal fulfillment here. This is making him a better person anyway, so let's not even focus on how embarrassing it is. There is one guy who did point out that it was embarrassing. We'll get to him later. He's on our
Yes.
side, of course, but
Yeah.
that was wow, what a tour de force from Chris Johnston.
Yeah.
Luke Fox Jukebox has some company at the top of this
Yeah.
this
Definitely.
mountaintop, because this was a lot.
I feel like Luke Fox is sort of like the broadcast TV version, and CJ is sort of like the pay cable version, right? So you're going to pay for him, you're going to get the really good stuff. But you can watch good stuff on free TV too, but if you want to pay, you get the really good stuff. Okay. So thank you, CJ, for that. Thank you, The Athletic, for that. But we're going to move back to a different publication now, and a man named Michael Tracos. Now, Tracos, you may remember as the guy who, when Tavares, I forget if it was after he signed or before he signed, basically said, he's been skating with, I forget who he said on one side, and 6th round pick Anders Lee on the other side, as Lee was in the midst of like a 40-goal season. So Michael Tracos maybe not going to be too focused on the Islanders, and that's fine. But this is a fantastic selection. It's our longest selection of the evening, but it's going to be followed by the shortest selection, so we kind of balance things out. And again, this just this is a great example of kind of writing one way and then immediately turning it around and making the exact arguments against what you're basically just saying. So, Michael, if you will, read this article. This is from the Hockey News, by the way. Michael Tracos used to be with the, I believe, the National Post or whatever, but this is from the Hockey News, and it's called "Handing the Sea Over Must Not Have Been Easy, but it's what made John Tavares a perfect Toronto Maple Leafs captain," which you're going to find out maybe he wasn't so much a perfect Maple Leafs captain. But Michael, if you will, please read the Michael Tracos selection.
What a selfless move. What a shining example of leadership. Again, this is what made Tavares, and not Matthews or Morgan Riley, the natural choice to wear the C in the first place. Looking back, you could argue the Leafs made the wrong call. After all, the Leafs didn't win under Tavares, not in the way that anyone had expected them to. Out of the 5 years that Toronto made the playoffs with Tavares wearing the C, the Leafs made it out of the first round just once. Tavares, who at times was the highest paid Leaf and one of the highest paid players in the NHL, had 10 goals and 19 points in 31 playoff games as the captain. That's not enough, not even close. Like Mitch Marner, who went missing against the Bruins in this year's first-round loss, Tavares also underperformed when the Leafs needed him the most. With Matthews and William Nylander missing parts of the series, Tavares had just 1 goal and 1 assist in 7 games. That's not what you want, nor what you expect out of a captain. Statistically speaking, Tavares obviously won't go down as one of the best captains in the history of the Leafs. You need playoff success for that. You need moments. You need examples where you stood up and took over and made a difference. There was really never any of that. But he also won't go down as one of the worst. Tavares was never a difference maker the way Sundin was. He didn't lead with his fists and his body like Wendell Clark did. He wasn't a rah-rah guy like Gilmore. But he also wasn't a me-first guy. Often criticized as being robotic or devoid of emotion, Tavares was a master of stoicism. He led by example. And his example was of a quiet nature, where he never cheated you on effort and always did the right thing. He was okay with sharing the spotlight and with passing the torch.
Fantastic.
Oh, my Lord.
Fantastic. Getting the passing the torch in there.
Mm-hmm.
Also great work. My favorite. So basically what Tracos is saying here, and the article is, like 3 times longer than this. What he's saying is the best thing this guy ever did as Leafs captain was to give up the Leafs captain. That's basically what he's saying. Because everything else he did sucked, right? And it just reminds, if you've ever seen Rocky Balboa, like where he's getting ready to make his comeback fight, and his trainer Duke is like, speed, you ain't got it. Power, you ain't got it. Footwork, you ain't got it. And Stallone is like, oh, thanks. It's just like, okay, thanks a lot, man. Like I was dying reading this. I was literally laughing. I was reading this at work and I was laughing out loud. I couldn't believe it. And I kept thinking like, okay, where can I cut it off? Where can I cut it off? And I'm like, I got to do this whole thing. We got to include this whole thing because it's just too much. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Everything here is 100% true and also 100% hilarious. It's the funniest thing I've ever read.
It's like a eulogy. Like the many saints of Toronto. He never cheated you on effort. Have you ever seen him try to forecheck?
Yeah, seriously. Have you missed every overtime this man has ever played?
He cheats you on effort all the time.
That's so funny. My God.
Oh,
Wow.
God.
This is unbelievable.
He was a saint.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. It reads like one of those eulogies of someone who maybe had like a controversial past or whatever, and they're like, well, like, you know, he did have a pretty big impact on the world at large, but there was that whole thing we did over there in like the Balkans that we're not going to talk about. It's insane because Ken Healy sent this to me like the day that Tavares got named. Like I think Michael Tracos had this thing he had it in the drawer ready to be filed, obviously, because you want to be first in these situations. And as I was reading it, I started to wonder if I was seeing things because I'm like, wait a minute. He was talking about how this is, you know, he is like a shining light, basically the perfect example of what a captain is. And then he goes into the best line. My favorite line. It's not the most eloquent line of these selections, but it is my favorite line of maybe any Master Leaf Theater we've ever done. Is quote, but he also won't go down as one of the worst. That's like what you said. That's like what we'd say about Bill Guerin or like Doug Waite as their captaincy. Like, oh yeah, you know what? Dwayne Rollison he was not the best Islander goalie ever, but he was better than Jan Denis. Like he's got that going for him.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it's like what you say about, you know, the fourth movie in a series. You're like, well, it wasn't the worst one, but it wasn't really that good. It wasn't as good as the first one, you know? Like,
oh my God.
Really funny. Yeah.
But putting that in an article where you're, you know, gassing this guy up, you're carrying water for him, and then just putting these paragraphs in there are just so good. You put it perfectly before we even read it, which is that it's one of those articles that just starts tearing down his own like hypothesis. It's so funny. He was not a difference maker the way Sundin was. He didn't leave with his fists and body like Wendell Clark did. He also wasn't a raw guy like Gilmore. But but the one thing he wasn't was a me first guy. So there's that. Right. He also said at one point like he never did the wrong thing or something like that. Yeah, he kind of did once. He did lie to us that one time. He was a me first guy in one pretty important part of this whole saga here. Right. But you know, I don't know if anyone remembers that somehow.
Not there. They don't.
No.
The rah-rah thing reminded me of a stirring speech that they captured on All or Nothing when Will Arnett narrated it. And it was a long shot of him in the locker room, and he's looking at everyone, and then he looks down at the floor and he goes, just bear down. End of speech.
Wow.
I'm so happy you brought that up because there's a part in that documentary which I'm going to rewatch for like the 6th time this summer now because I love remembering that it exists. That these guys were talking about Matthews and like how he's like the lead by example guy, and Tavares isn't the type of guy who will he lets his work and do the leading for him, right? He doesn't talk much. And then there's a scene where they are down 2-0 going into the 3rd period of Game 7 against the Canadiens. Like they're actively choking away the 3-1 lead already. We're into Game 7. They're down 2-0. And Jason Spezza like looks around the room and he's just like shitting on them. And Morgan Riley's like, we still have time. And Spezza's like, yeah, we have 20 more minutes and then that's it. And Matthews goes, yeah, don't give up. Like this is the guy I would follow it to battle. Like, he's like, show some urgency, guys. Like it's a little late for that, man. You already blew the 3-1 lead and you're down 2-0 in a 3rd period of a no-show game. Like,
that's really funny.
Leads by example.
One of my favorite things about these articles too is that it only really talks about 3 other Leafs captains: Matt Sundin, Wendell Clark, and Doug Gilmour, right? Now the Leafs have been around for like 100 years. They've had a million captains. And so, I mean, obviously those are the guys in kind of like the most recent memory, I suppose. But I wonder if Traycos had in mind a particular me first guy. And, it could be maybe, Dion Phaneuf, Rob Ramage, or Rick Vive, or Daryl Sittler. Which one of you is the me first guy? Go fuck yourself, according to Michael Traycos, because you weren't not John Tavares, who was not one of the best, but not one of the worst.
His tweet when he tweets out this link was like, Austin Matthews, you got to take note. Like this is how you become. This is how you be a captain.
Yeah,
like it's so. This stuff is so good.
It's amazing. There's going to be links to all these, so if you want to read the whole thing for all these, by all means,
trust
me,
you want to read them.
Absolutely. We're going to actually go back to the Athletic for one more here, and I thought this one worked better after Traycos than where CJ was before, and this is from CJ's colleague Joshua Cook, who wrote something here that, again, I had to read over and over again. It's just one paragraph, but I think you'll all get where I'm coming from in an article that, it's more Matthews related, but this to me just, again, blew my mind. And it's something that we've been talking about throughout this entire thing. So Michael, if you would please read our selection from Joshua Cook at The Athletic.
Discussions between Tavares and Leafs general manager Brad Treliving took place over days through July as a change was contemplated. When Tavares signed as a free agent in Toronto in 2018, he never assumed he would be named captain. He accepted the challenge. But he also knew deep in the back of his mind that eventually, as Matthews grew as a person, a player like him might step in and become captain after him.
The thing about this to me is when Tavares signed as a free agent in Toronto in 2018, he never assumed he would be captain.
He just was captain. He just
right. Guys.
Yeah.
Guys, come on. Like, there's a word that gets thrown around nowadays called gaslighting. And, it's where you make somebody think that what they're seeing and what they're experiencing isn't real. It's based on an old movie. You should check it out. Gaslight. I think it's with Ingrid Bergman. I'm not sure. Anyway, great movie. And this is not gaslighting. This is just straight up lying. Like, there's no way that this man assumed that he wouldn't be named the captain of this team. I'm almost certain at the time they didn't want to do it right away because they thought that maybe that was a little too much. But when he got named captain, as Mike has been saying, announced by the Pierre LeBrun all capitals tweet, this was just sort of like, yeah, we kind of knew this was coming. Like, this guy signed here based on like some kind of PowerPoint or whatever presentation that Kyle Dubas gave him. You can't tell me he didn't think he was going to be captain of this team. And like our friend Sean Cuthbert said, he did not think this was going to go this way when they made him captain. And I guarantee you he thought he was going to be captain. I mean, Michael, what did you think of this when you read this? To me, I had to read this over and over again, because I'm like, come on, that's just a lie. Like, there's no way this guy didn't think he was going to be captain of this team.
I would be surprised if they didn't put it in the recruitment video.
Right.
Got him.
Exactly. They give him a jersey with a C on it.
Yeah, they're probably all saluting the camera. I mean, yeah, it was at least implicit in the deal.
Had to be.
Yeah, but I feel like it was mentioned ad nauseum. Like, oh, he's going to be the next. It was basically like Dan said. They were pretty upfront with like, hey, they didn't want to like throw it on him in his first year in the market. They wanted him to get his feet wet, let him ease in before they did it. I feel like if you asked any of the players on that roster, if you asked Pierre Engvall or Frederick Anderson, like, hey, who's going to be the next captain? They'd all say, oh, the new guy, the guy who was toiling away on Long Island, obviously. And you know what's crazy about this is that Josh Cloak has this weird talent where he gets into the minds of these guys. That he not only did he get into Tavares's brain and know that he definitely didn't assume he would be captain, but he also knew that he saw this situation was coming too. He also knew deep in the back of his mind that eventually, as Matthews grew as a person, a player like him might step in and become captain after him. What? He got John Tavares went through all of that in his head back in Toronto in 2018, sitting by his pool, writing his Players Tribune article and getting ready to to post a picture of himself in his bed sheets with his Star
Right.
Wars clock. Yeah, he was definitely thinking like, yeah, I'm not. I don't think I'm definitely going to become captain, but I do think that if I do become captain, they'll probably take it away from me in a few years and give it to Austin Matthews because he's really like, what the hell is
Oh my
going on
God.
here? You could. What's another situation where you could have just cut this entire second half out of here, and the
Right.
editor should have just been like, yeah, we don't need this part.
Yeah.
We could just end with he never assumed he would be captain. He accepted the challenge. We don't need to get into like we're really getting into some creepy stuff in John Tavares' brain here.
But again,
But
there's no way he didn't assume he was going to be captain, or
no,
like Michael said, just implied that he was going to be captain of this team.
Mhm.
He
And
had
then-
just been the captain of a team.
yeah, exactly.
Did he know it when he was getting, the key to the city and holiday proclamations?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this guy's definitely not going to be captain. He's definitely not thinking it.
All right. It's just that's just a lie. It's
It's a
again,
lie.
it's not gaslight. It's just a lie.
But that's
Yeah.
what they lie to us all. These
Right.
folks just lie to us all the time. But they couch it in such ridiculous prose
Yeah.
that you're like, whoa,
Right.
like Luke Fox. Like hey man, this person doesn't exist. You're lying to me right now. But you're writing it in such a way that I'm afraid to point it out because I don't want to make you upset that
Yeah.
that you're saying this. CJ too.
Seriously.
Like what?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's staring down a new path towards personal fulfillment. No, he's not. He's sad because he's not the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs anymore.
Seriously. Okay, we are coming down to our last couple here. Michael, you've done a fantastic job. I've not laughed harder recording an episode of this show than I have tonight.
Oh, thanks.
It's so much fun. I mean, I enjoy reading them, but like hearing them read brings them to life in a whole new way. And the fact that you're not laughing through these things is really remarkable.
It
shows
it feels
professional you are.
what's that show with the guys when they God, I can't list 3 guys from Staten Island.
Oh, and Practical Jokers.
Yes, yeah.
My
I feel like
daughter's
I'm
watching
in
them
the room when they're telling someone to do something, and then I'm just giggling like a schoolgirl as he's
Right.
reading it because I'm like, okay.
That's funny. Yeah,
It's
that's
funny
great.
that Mike pointed out that even the choices I'm making are still more grounded than the words themselves
Yes,
because I am making a meal
I
out
know.
of these.
Yeah, right.
That's the beautiful thing.
I'm
about
going
this.
all in.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know if Kenneth Branagh could get to this level.
Right.
Man. I really don't. Like you,
I was gonna say we might have to bring in
Wow.
William Shatner next time. I don't
yeah.
know.
Like
Really,
I really, I don't know how you could get to it.
I threw in a couple Shatners for you, Dan. I
I caught
trailed
that.
off in the middle of sentences a couple of
Definitely,
times there.
definitely caught that. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
again, this is perfect. This is perfect for him, But
It is.
we just have a couple more things. I have 2 tweets here. Let's just do the first one. And this is from a guy we talked about in our last episode when we did the other Master Leaf Theater at the end of the season. Jeff Villette, otherwise known as the artist formerly known as Jeffler on Twitter, had some tweets prior to the actual handover and the press conference, where it was kind of, this guy only talks in threads on Twitter. I can't imagine what it must be like having an actual conversation with him in real life. And so this first tweet, let's just do the first one. I thought was really, really very funny. And again, it shows the kind of 2 sides of the Leafs, media coin or media, or I guess, I don't even know how to put it. Like the Leafs kind of industrial complex experience for the rest of us. So Michael, if you would please read the first Jeffler tweet here, and we'll discuss it after.
Honestly, the fan base at large has given Tavares about 3 weeks of respect in the last 6 years. The week he signed, the week Islanders fans first booed him, and the week he scored the series winner versus Tampa. Otherwise, it's been a lot of unfair dismissiveness.
Man, read with the perfect amount of nerd Twitter rage. That's fantastic. Yeah, this is also uproariously funny.
Yeah, it's a lie.
Like, I mean, the Leafs fan base has had it out for Tavares. They're obviously their expectations are very high. They haven't won anything. And, Twitter, when you're John Tavares and you miss an assignment in overtime and you give up a goal or whatever, is not a fun place. I get that. And I think that's kind of what he's saying here. But to call it unfair dismissiveness when after everything that we have just read and discussed over the last 50 some odd minutes is a lie, complete and utter fabrication. That is nonsense. And it gets to exactly what you've been saying, Mike, this whole time. Like, this guy is treated with kid gloves like you wouldn't believe. It's crazy.
Yeah,
they
still are.
I can't. This is the last thing I would have expected anybody to say. Well, that's not true.
Right.
In this universe, obviously, it's we're playing by different rules, but it's crazy because I remember when John Tavares played his first 3 years in Toronto, you couldn't escape the love for the man. Like, that's all they loved this guy, and whatever. Like, I get why their fan base would run to him with the way he played in the beginning of in that first year, despite not winning around to the playoffs, and the fact that he did choose them, all that. Like, I get that side of it. Not once have I ever seen him just being unfairly dismissed.
Yeah.
It's either been, yeah, like he's been a disappointment. He makes too much money in the second half of the experience for them, or the first half it was just like groveling.
Right.
And the groveling has still continued. And as we talked about in the last episode, you are not allowed to use the F word around this guy.
Right.
He doesn't. He says definitely not. This is definitely not about whether I succeeded or failed. You're not allowed to say that word if you work for the big Maple Leafs. But so where I have no idea where this is coming from, because I would just say, yeah, this guy's been treated like any other by the fans. He's been treated by any other highly paid headline grabbing star of his sport. Like, when he plays well, people love it. When he doesn't, fans get mad on Twitter. But the media around him, I can't think of an athlete I would really have to rack my brain to find an athlete who got a better rub of the salt here than him. Because I mean, Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants, and I feel like every week when I was growing up, people were like, "This guy sucks."
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
Is it time to move on from Eli Manning? Like, wait a minute, the guy who just won the Super Bowl like 6 months ago, like,
Yeah.
That's how this guy gets treated like a prince.
Yeah. There are Rangers fans right now that are ready to ship Igor Shesterkin literally anywhere so that the Rangers don't have to pay him, without realizing that if you don't have this guy, your team is in trouble. Right? Like, I would say Henrik Lundqvist got this kind of, measure of respect too, but like,
he
again,
won. He won.
Yeah, he won.
He would go to the like he
Right.
tortured us. Like, he tortured us with the winning, not with
Right.
the getting written about by, Larry Brooks or whatever. He did, because he did, and he still gets this treatment. And also, like, I hate Henrik Lundqvist. I actually had a conversation with somebody yesterday. He was like, if you were out to dinner with Henrik Lundqvist, like, you wouldn't be able to contain yourself. I said, no, I'd be arrested, because I would jump across the table and try to strangle him, basically. Like, it would turn into a bit of a brawl that I would lose. But because he's like, that's crazy. Like, I know you hate the Rangers and all, but he's so cool. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. I get, like, he's Joe Cool. He's got the hair. John Tavares doesn't have that either. Like, he's missing that part of it too. He's had that projected onto him. The fact that all these guys always have to couch their praise with, listen, I get that he's not the most exciting guy in the room, but he's also not a failure. Like,
yeah.
It's bizarre.
If these Leafs won a Stanley Cup, or even had a deep run, he would still be the captain.
Yes.
They're
Absolutely.
selling to us that someone stripped of their captaincy due to year after year of spectacular failure was really just because the guy getting the captaincy now is so good. He's too good not to get the captaincy. That's what it is.
Yeah. You just nailed it. This is exactly what JD Bunkus and Sam McKee were talking about on that podcast, was that had he won or gotten to McKee's like, if they had just gotten to a conference final, for Christ's sake, this wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
This wouldn't be happening. So,
but but Matthews grew as a person so much.
Yeah. He grew as a person. He just reached up to John Tavares' chest and yanked that C right off.
Yeah.
This is mine now.
Kids are wearing his jersey.
Exactly. Yeah.
By the way, tell your kids to show up with their 34 jerseys on.
Exactly. Okay. We're going to get to our last one right now, and it's actually going to segue us into the second half of this episode, which I'll explain in a minute. But obviously this whole changeover was the news of the day for Monday, Tuesday, really Wednesday. Well, they had the announcement, everything. The Blues offer sheets, which, by the way, the Oilers decided, let those guys go this morning, were also kind of part of the conversation, but the Tavares Leafs thing was very big deal. And so Bleacher Report, their hockey arm, Open Ice, put out a tweet, basically just engagement farming, saying, summarize John Tavares' legacy as captain of the Leafs in one word. And the only reply worth mentioning is from our good friend and our mentor, Stan Fischler. So, Michael Paul Smith, you've done such a fantastic job. Will you please, in your best Stan Fischler, read the Maven's reply to this Bleacher Report tweet?
Failure.
Failure. That is Stan's summary of John
Thank
Tavares'
you,
legacy.
Dave.
Is Kathleen,
Thank you.
failure. And yeah, there's. I want to click on this right now. How many likes does this have? This has 533 likes. All from Islanders fans, I'm sure. That is amazing. Thank you,
so good.
Stan, and thank you, Michael. This has been fantastic. I mean, in all of the acting jobs, your podcast, Ted and Michael read sketches into microphones. Everybody needs to check it out. You've done so much. You've produced videos. You've written. You've directed stuff. Where does this episode rank amongst your performances? Would you say in terms of like personal satisfaction?
Oh, this is number one. This is number one. This was the most fun, and honestly, not laughing along with you guys and not going into like a full, SNL Jimmy Fallon Horatio Sands moment.
It's impressive.
That was the challenge for me.
I can imagine.
Did it make you a better actor? I feel like because there were a couple where I was really trying to hold it in and I couldn't do it anymore, and I was like, I hope I don't derail it, and you just kept going.
Thank you.
I don't know how. Like, how can you keep going when Luke Fox Jukebox is talking about the retail store about to be smashed with credit cards or whatever?
So when I directed the residuals, this web series that my wife and I made, I would say something because sometimes we'd all be laughing and then we'd have to like reset and go again. And I would say something to like bum everybody out just before, just to try to get us back to a neutral. So I would look at everyone and I would go, guys, Sarah McLachlan, puppies. That's all I would say. Like, if that's what it takes, to stifle your laughter, because we're burning daylight, we're wasting time, and that's what we have to do. So I have those little triggers for myself.
Yeah, there's times when we read these things where I'm afraid I'm going to turn into if you ever watch any of the Seinfeld behind the scenes stuff, Jerry Stiller is notorious for like laughing through his lines, and like they kind of work that into Frank's lines, so that he kept losing his train of thought, and like how that
Del Visto Becco. You think I can't get into Del Visto Becco?
Like, yeah, exactly.
Jerry, it's Del Boca Vista.
You want a piece of me? Like that line reading took like all day basically. Because every time we said it, somebody laughed. But like that's just the way it is. But having you do this was spectacular. We can't thank you enough. We'll have to have you do this again. I don't know if we can't have you do it like every time, because again, like Mike says, these are becoming more frequent, so we don't want to do that. But I think for the special episodes like this one, we'll definitely have to have
any damn time. It's entirely my pleasure.
And they do. I will say, like, they do take a mental toll on you. Like you start becoming a little bit like the Joker, like walking my dog, and I'm just like thinking about Luke Fox Jukebox, laughing, and like they do bleed into your personal life. So be careful what you wish for.
Definitely. Okay, so like I said before, we actually are going to have a second half of this episode because, we've been joking about his robotic nature, but John Tavares is a human being, and he does have a brain in his head, and he's not a complete idiot. And so, we want to know what's kind of thinking and going on in there, and we don't really know. He's entering the last year of his contract. He doesn't have an extension, as Chris Johnson told us before. And in talking this over, in just friendly conversations, Arthur Staple said that he kind of can see a way that Tavares comes back to the Islanders, and said, have me on the podcast and I'll explain. And I was like, you got it. And so Sunday, we had Art on and we talked with him. We always love talking with Art as well. And so that's going to be the second half of this. So listen to that. Listen to what Art has to say, and maybe you'll come around. I came around a little bit towards the end. So he can change minds. He's a very pervasive guy. So maybe you'll come around to it. But listen to that. It's sort of like the flip side of this. We don't want to be monsters here. We're having fun, but we want to kind of give the other side a few minutes here. And I will say this. I didn't think of this until that episode was over, but it is now August 20th. This is going to come out August 21st. If John Tavares is not signed by the time the season begins for the Islanders, I'm going to make this episode free for everybody to listen to. This is going to be a Patreon exclusive for the summer. Thank you so much for your support and for your dough. We really, really appreciate it. We hope you enjoy this. We're trying to make sure that, you're not like, well, why would I subscribe to a hockey podcast during the summer? Trust me, you get some stuff from us during the summer. We're really hard to come up with some fun and fresh stuff. But if he is still not signed, things might get a little bit little bit hot under the collar up there. So we'll put this out and we'll see where it goes. And we'll see. Any final thoughts? Michael, as our guest, we'll start with you. Any final thoughts on this wonderful selection of Master Leaf Theater stories that we heard in tonight's episode?
Yes, read the articles with caution. As Mike mentioned, you could find yourself arguing with the trees. But then you can listen to this show and you can feel heard and seen. The only time I listened to this show and disagreed was when I believe Michael Leboff said that the quality of pizza in the city isn't as good as Long Island. That was the only disagreement I've ever had with you. And
Wow.
I had the argument with my refrigerator in that moment. So yes, enjoy, everyone.
Excellent. And yes, please don't read them while driving either.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a big problem.
But thank you again, Michael. Great advice. And again, check out Michael's podcast, Ted and Michael Read Sketches into Microphones, wherever you can. And enjoy his work. Look him up on IMDb. He's there. Michael Leboff, any final thoughts from you? This has been quite a ride for us here this episode.
It has been quite a ride. And one that like I said, I was really looking forward to it, but I also knew it was going to be heavy. Like this was going to be something big to parse through. Obviously, this is a subject that is very near and dear to our hearts. And no matter what, I always do feel better when we get to do these, because we're not the only ones. That's why there's an audience of people who listen to these specific episodes and will hit us up on Twitter or whatever and say, like, thank you for doing that. I read that article and I thought I was losing my mind, because as you said, it's not gaslighting. Like, we're just being lied to all the time. And the audience that the articles are actually written for, people like Leafs fans or just general hockey fans who aren't Islander fans, it's like they don't know that he's lying to you when he says that the John Tavares didn't think he was going to become the captain of the Maple Leafs or whatever. So to actually be able to have these conversations in a way like this, it is very helpful, because I'm like, okay, I am crazy. I know I'm crazy, and these articles make me a little bit more crazy every day, but at least I know that I'm not alone. And that, I think, is kind of just the gist of sports fandom in general.
Yeah. And the gist of what we've been saying ever since this guy left us. You're not alone. We're not alone. We're all in this Islanders thing together. And again, we thank you so much for listening. And please stay tuned for the second half of this, in which Arthur Staple lays out the case that maybe John Tavares could come back. I know it sounds crazy. Trust me, it sounded crazy to me too. But by the end of it, he made his case very convincing. So enjoy that. Thank you again for your support. Thank you, Michael Paul Smith, for lending your lovely voice to this. And thank you, Michael Leboff, of course. And we'll be back soon with, I guess, our next mailbag episode, which is, I think, coming up in a couple weeks in September. All right. Thanks a lot. And here's us with Art from Sunday.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It is today, August 18th, 2024. And we thought it would be cool to have on one of our favorites. You know him from The Athletic, of course. He is Arthur Staple. Art, how has your summer been? You traded in the busy work of a double beat writer for being a husband and a dad during the summer. And how's that gone this year?
It's been great. It's been great. We've got a real published author in the house now.
Yes.
My wife's book, The Snap, came out just last week, and it's from Doubleday. You can find it on Amazon and everywhere, bookstores, etc. It's been an awesome experience. She seems to think that my Islanders book is a good combination with it, but I think I've sold as many of the dozens of copies that I could possibly sell to all the Islander fans out there. So now it's her time, and The Snap is the thing that people should get. So that's what our summer has been mostly about.
That's very cool. Yes, it's The Snap. It's by Elizabeth Staple, and it's on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it an audiobook, and it's about a murder mystery in the NFL, which sounds incredibly cool, and I can't wait to read it. So that's got to be pretty exciting. You guys were in Bryant Park signing books, which is pretty cool. I gotta say, it's not an experience I think a lot of people get. However, we are here to bother you during the summer to talk about the news that has swept the hockey world last week, and that is the Maple Leafs captaincy, with Austin Matthews getting the C after John Tavares has turned it over and passed the torch on to Matthews, who of course is a fine player and a perfectly reasonable choice for captain. But of course, Islanders fans, including us, have had a lot of fun with this news. And in talking to you about it, you seem to think that there's another side of this that maybe we're not quite picking up. And I would love to hear this theory. And I'll just let you run with it, because when you said this to me, I was like, no, come on. And you were like, have me on the show. And I was like, all right, you're on. So let's hear what your theory is regarding John Tavares and the Islanders in particular.
Well, it's a theory, and that means that there's about a 0.01% chance this could come to fruition. But if certain things happen, I could see the end result being a possible reunion of John Tavares and the Islanders. Now, um, it's far-fetched, obviously,
Yes.
because I think, and you and I have talked about this, that before the season starts, I think he's going to end up extending in
Yeah.
Toronto, because I think everything around this decision, which I think was going on for a long time this offseason, he was involved every step of the way. I think if you watch the clip, he was at the changeover. I think if this was a, thanks and good luck for the Leafs, I don't think we would have seen Tavares be as front and center. And I think for whatever faults he's had with Leaf fans, because they haven't won anything since he got there, I think they got to look on him in a positive way to be able to make this kind of changeover and take the C off his sweater and pass it along to the team's best player and kind of its central guy, and have his kids in Matthews jerseys and yada yada, all the stuff that Islander fans don't want to hear about. But however, if we choose another path, which is the Leafs again, they don't extend him, and he goes into the season, into the final season of his contract, and the same thing happens to Toronto, which is they're good in the regular season, he has an okay season, and then they don't do anything in the playoffs. I wonder if he wouldn't mind being somewhere else, because there's still plenty of pressure on him. He puts a lot of pressure on himself. I think everybody who's an Islander fan can remember that part about him. And the other thing that has to converge with that is that the Islanders have to have some sort of off-season upheaval, whether it's they have a bad season and they trade Brock Nelson at the end of the year, they trade Kyle Palmieri in the offseason, they trade JG Pageau. I think it would fit better if Pageau was the one that got traded, because Tavares probably is a number 3 center going forward. He'll be 35 next year. I don't know that he's necessarily the kind of guy that is going to be playing his usual 19-20 minutes a night. We'll see what he does this year. But if we get to next offseason and he doesn't extend with the Leafs, and it's clear that they're going to move on from him, and the Islanders have shuffled their centers around, at least as far as their number 2 and number 3 centers go, why wouldn't it work? Lou Lamoriello likes John Tavares. He made a very big pitch to keep him that Tavares rejected. And amazingly enough, there are still some people within the organization who worked with him who like Tavares quite a bit, and I think he likes them. And I do wonder, it obviously still stings a little bit for him, the reaction that he gets when he comes to Long Island, and he's going to get it again this year, even though it seems like maybe now that he's not the captain and clearly things haven't worked out as well, maybe some of the Islander fans would take it easy on him, but probably not. I think Mike has clued me in enough to the feelings of most of the fan base. But I could see, I think I said it the last time we were talking about this, was that you can see a way for them the Islanders fans to embrace him again. I don't know that it necessarily involves him playing here again, but what better way to do it? And I think that if he did make that decision to come back here, and the Islanders wanted him here, and there was a good spot for him, 3C, some power play, yada yada. He's become a much better defensive player over the years. Um, I think everyone would be pretty excited about it, and it would tie a nice bow on the end of his career with the one decision that I think he made that he probably has some regret about. Certainly, the regret about how what the reaction was, that he could kind of just erase that part of it and complete the circle and end up his career back here for a couple of years, a year, 2 years, whatever it is, and get those good feelings back. Be part of a team that can embrace him again. It's not going to be filled with guys that he played with necessarily, but certainly guys that respect him and know him well. Know him a bit. I just think it would be neat. It won't happen, but in my head,
Yeah.
the story sounded pretty good.
Well, it's a fun exercise to think about. It's a lot to take in. Mike, where are you on Art's theory here? I mean, he definitely makes a compelling case for this, but I think, how would you feel if this kind of scenario came to pass?
Well, there's two questions, right? There's how would I feel if it did come to pass? I'll answer that one second. The first question, though, I think is, I don't think that there is any chance in hell that Tavares would want to come back. And I feel that the C coming off the chest actually gives me and other Islander fans more fodder. Because the where's your C or who's your captain chance will be ringing loud and clear at UBS Arena on whatever day they come for the first game of the year. And that's going to make the 7th year. So they've come to play the Islanders, let's just say, on Long Island, 12 times?
Something
Probably
like that.
since
10,
he's come.
Maybe 10.
Yeah,
something.
10 to 12. And we'll say it by the time next season finishes, it'll be 12 or so. So a dozen times where he's had to come just get his ass toasted by Islander fans for 2.5 hours and look up and be like, this is the team I played for. I toiled away here for 9 years, and they are still now they are chanting about what was, on a human level, had to have been at least a little bit of an embarrassing moment of losing the captaincy. So I just I can't think of anybody who would want to come back, and I don't blame him. If, like, let's say the Islanders did make him an offer, I would almost be embarrassed because I think he would turn it down, and then it would look kind of sad on our part. But so that's my take on that. Like, I don't think that. I think that maybe Lamoriello's like, he's a good fit, let's make an offer. But I just don't think Tavares or his family would ever want to do it, considering the way we've treated him, and we'll continue to treat him going into next year. That said, if and Art did say it's far-fetched, and we all are, this is a fun exercise for an August evening. But let's say it does happen, far-fetched or not, Tavares comes back. I would have a lot to talk through with a lot of different people to get. I would definitely be at the home opener and at his first game. I don't think I'm a big enough person to move on and forgive him, even if he does come back.
No,
as
I'm definitely not.
35-year-old.
Yeah,
I don't think so. But the only satisfaction I would get is that if he leaves Toronto after the contract empty-handed, they don't win the Stanley Cup. Hell, they have another first round exit or don't make the playoffs next year, whatever happens, and he comes back and it's like, holy shit, he went back to the Islanders. Like, that's like, Leafs fans are probably, I would enjoy that aspect of it, like Leafs fans having to come to grips with him now coming back to the island. But I don't think I would be able to come around to even, like, if he scored the first goal of the season in the home opener and I was there, I don't know what I would do. It would be one of those situations where I would freeze, which, it doesn't happen to me very often. I feel like I can kind of like talk and finesse my way out of a lot of different situations. This wouldn't be one of them. And it's because I'm not a big enough person to like get over this whole situation. I don't know. Like it hurts my head to even like imagine it, honestly. And what number would he be wearing in all this?
I was
'Cause
going to
91 is
ask the same
retired.
question. Yeah, I was going to ask the same question. I don't know. Yeah, I
I
definitely. Oh, go ahead.
no, I just I think he could start over with a new number if he so desired. Obviously, can't take 19, but
Right.
you know, I'd be interested to see what he did. You know,
It would make
the thing,
great
the
work for
main
you. I
thing.
mean, think about the
Oh
Oh,
my
amount of
God. Yeah.
beat writers that would come down from
I know that'd be
Toronto. You'd be showing them the ropes, showing them the schools.
um yeah. One of the things that's obviously holding it back in my mind, one of the hundreds of things, is you know, it would be a big personality change on his part. It would be a guy who's always been super intense and a little bit, you know, repressed sometimes. I think, you know, super focused on playing hockey and his family, and you know, not a whole lot else. I don't know that he would see the kind of sly humor in it, um, that I
Yeah.
see in it. That
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
That's the other thing here is we are completely overrating basically everybody else's sense of humor in this situation, right? Like
Yeah.
the three
Exactly.
of us Islander fans, we have a pretty good sense of humor about all this stuff. It's very different on the other side of the window.
Right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and you know, Lou is a pretty persuasive guy still, even in his advanced age. And when he has an idea, he can sell it pretty well. You know,
Mm.
I think the idea that there was any ill will among guys that are still here with him is completely overblown. They're all still friends. You know,
Mm.
I think most professional athletes don't get too caught up in those kinds of things unless there's something really personal involved, which I don't think there was in this case. Um, you know, and I basically, I wonder, like, I if he realizes it's over in Toronto and he still wants to play, his legacy in Toronto will not be that great.
Mm.
It will be he went and took the big pile of money that was offered to him. They had this vision that Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas and MLSE laid out. It did not come to fruition. They'll end up having one or two playoff series um, in 7 years, and his old team has had a lot of success, even though it's not in the same place it was a couple of years ago. Um, so you know, I wonder if maybe it's, you know, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's worried too much about his legacy. But
Mm.
if you are that kind of person, you say, okay, well, maybe I can get some, you know, get some goodwill back with the with a fan base that completely embraced me, and that, you know, we turned around a completely moribund franchise when he arrived, and all that stuff that went away astonishingly quickly among the fan base when
Mm.
he made his decision could come back, despite the way the two of you feel. I have a sneaking suspicion that you two, who know so much about this situation and know so much about Islanders history and remember quite strongly your
Mm.
feelings of pre Tavares, how what a complete joke the franchise was for so many years,
Mm.
that maybe the good feelings will come back, because there were good feelings. It
Sure.
was, you know, he was the main character in bringing them back to respectability.
Mm.
And you know, kind of, I think a lot of the guys too who were here after he left, even though they used his departure as fuel when Barry Trotz came in, I think, you know, a lot of them benefited from playing with him.
Yeah.
So I don't I don't see it as a complete impossibility, because it seems so ridiculous from the outside. I think from
Mm.
the inside, a lot would have to happen, but
Yeah.
it's not, there's not no chance until somebody says no, there's no chance. I don't.
Right. Well, and in fairness, we should say that there is a strong possibility that he just signs an extension. This captaincy thing may lead to an extension, as some articles have said already. I think for me, the thing about it is, and I mean, you know, Tavares is like a sphinx. He doesn't really give off a lot of tells. You know, he's got quite a poker face. I'll give him that. You know, you never quite know what he's thinking. And like, it almost totally depends on what his feelings are about the way he left, the way he's been treated by the Islanders. Because it to me, he looks like a guy who gets very upset when he comes to play for the island, like on the island, like he doesn't like it, right? And he's very upset. The other, I think we've talked about this, Mike and I have, like, the fact that he gets so upset about it is what leads Leafs writers to kind of take up their sword and shield and try and like defend him. Whenever he comes down here, like they get together at, like the guys in the beginning of Gladiator, and they start to kind of like charge the island because they know that what he's going to get. And so it totally depends on how he feels, because like you said, if he's not a big guy on legacy, and again, assuming the Leafs don't re-sign him, then I could see him being like, if he is a big guy on legacy, I can see him being like, you know what, the way I left was not cool. I see where they're coming from, and this would make things right. But if he's not, he could sign with San Jose, and it would be like, all right, well, that's it. But the other thing too, he's like, I got small kids. I don't know if he's going to want to go to like a brand new place. I've said for a long time, I can totally see him doing what a lot of old Leafs do and sign in either Montreal or Ottawa, because they're right there. It's pretty close by. So I think it totally depends on that. But that being said, he's almost Lamoriello-esque in that we have no idea what he's thinking, right? Like, you could never possibly tell what was going through his mind. So
no, that's part of the funny, the whole like kind of irony in this situation is when the Islanders made the regime change, they basically got the two most John Tavares guys at the helm that, like, Barry Trotz and him would have been
right.
Perfect for one another. Him and Lamoriello would have been perfect for one another.
Right.
Tavares would probably already be like the assistant GM, assistant GM of this team. And what Art was saying before is like, yeah, he was the main character. He provided us with all these incredible memories. That's why it sucks so much. That's why we hate him so much. Is because, like, yeah, we were on the right path here, buddy.
Yeah.
We were going to something special for you and us. And maybe, it's not anything crazy like a Stanley Cup, but there was something happening, and you pulled the chute on us, and you knew exactly what the gravity of that situation was. The one thing that's occurring to me here, first of all, I need to get this on record again, that when the Islanders lost John Tavares, when he was doing the free agency tour, there was a big one of the underlying narratives was that he was a huge players union guy at the time. And I'm assuming he still was. And he was very into the players union being strong, and that he wanted to take this meeting and to show like the power that the players had in these like free agency negotiations. And he wants to get as good a contract as possible in a good situation. So if he does take, the Mark Giordano kind of Jason Spezza, Jake, whatever the cap hit's going to come in the extension, and it's like way under value, I'm going to call bullshit on him being a huge players union guy, because he's obviously not yielding his, he doesn't have the hammer. He's not using the hammer, Elliot. But so that's one thing. But the one thing that just occurred to me here, which would be even funnier, is if he does extend with the Leafs like 3 years, and then we get to a point where he's like 38 or 30, almost Chara like where he's like way at the end of his career. And we're talking like, okay, now we're in a funny situation where he wants to keep playing, wants to do like the 1 year ring chase tour, and whether or not the Islanders are conducive to that. But if we're talking about like a 39-year-old Tavares at that time, and he's just that to me would be even funnier. To rehash this conversation, because I think we'll have an opportunity to, because I don't think he's coming back. And as a lot of people have said, it sounds like the extension talks have started. I do think the Leafs are the ones who are going to be like a little less enthusiastic about it, though, because they're not going to be able to change the, as we were promised, they can't come back with all four of their core four, which is definitely not happening. There's no way in hell. We're not going to come back from our cottages in August and have all four of these guys still as a member of the Toronto Maple Leaf. But if they do go through what they go through every year, like, they're going to have to sign Marner to an extension or lose him for nothing, or Tavares would have to go. So I feel like they can't really sign him to an extension before the season, because then it's just, like the only person who possibly can go now in this situation is Marner, or we just continued this whole song and dance. But
Well, let me ask you real quick, Art. Like, we've been talking also this summer about guys like Cal Clutterbuck, Matt Martin, who did play with John Tavares. Like, what do you think they're? I mean, if they don't come back, like, do you think that this sort of plays into their decisions? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how to really phrase it. But it's like the guys of that ilk we're all so tight that if those guys aren't on the team, I don't. Do you think that would have any effect on this? Again, this very theoretical situation?
I mean, kind of like what you guys were saying, that he's going to be if he's leaving Toronto and he's still, and it's
Hmm.
going in the summer of 25, where he's still got a few years of decent hockey left in him. I don't think he's going to be emotional about it. And I think, as we've discussed here, I think it was as plenty of people have reported, it was a very difficult decision for him to leave. And I think because it was difficult for him, he didn't realize how difficult it was for everybody else.
Right.
I think he felt like, this was really hard for me, and people should understand that it was hard for me. And then he looked up and saw Islander fans throwing rotten fruit at him, and he was like, but this was hard for me. Like,
Yeah.
you guys need to sympathize. And I think that's just, it's his life. He was completely focused on it and consumed by it. So I wonder if those feelings, regardless of who's there, I mean, you have to know whatever that you're not going to come back to the same team. The fact that he could come back to even a few of the same guys 7 years later is pretty remarkable. That essentially the top 4 defensemen on the team were all young guys in the organization when he was there the first time. And Barzal and Brock Nelson, if he's still here, and Lee, that's a lot of guys.
Seriously.
For a team that wasn't very good when he left and is not, not incredibly, highly ranked now.
I mean, Cizikas is still going to be here no matter what.
That's
Cizikas
right.
is going to die an Islander. He said it.
Right. I'm pretty sure they made sure that he met Sorokin when Sorokin came over that one random summer, development camp. So I think maybe the fact that there's still some familiarity, there's infrastructure people that haven't changed in the front office either. And Long Island, I think he and his wife liked living on Long Island. I can't say for sure if he still owns a place there or not. I would guess probably not, but I think they still have people here that they like to see. Matt Molson still lives in the area. Kyle Opozo's not coming back, but Cal Clutterbuck, I think he and his family are going to stay around here. Matt Martin and his family are obviously going to stay around here when he's done playing, regardless of what they both do this coming season. So, I think the familiarity just in general might trump the hesitation of, they're all going to laugh at me and they're going to get even more mad if I don't do what I set out to do. I just think, if it comes to that and he's getting advice, whether it's from Pat Brisson or his wife or parents or whoever, that the hurt feelings obviously haven't gone away. And if that's going to be front and center in his mind, that he's like, it's like, these people were mean to me, and nobody, very few people would run back towards that. But there's also I could very easily win those people back over because they loved me for almost 10 years.
You got to think, like you said, between his wife, his agent, his parents, at least one of them is going to be saying to him, "Excuse me, but are you fucking nuts?" Like that kind of thing.
I mean, I'm sure he's saying it to himself. And as Mike said, exactly. when they come in this year and they're still booing him and making fun of him, I'm sure they'll be like, "Well, that was a nice thought for 5 seconds." But,
exactly. No, we're not doing
these guys.
We're going to sign with the Sabres. Like,
maybe what clicked it in my head a little bit was, it takes a pretty self-assured guy to do what he did, going to the press conference where he's giving up the captaincy to give it to this other guy and have the whole family there. Like, that says a lot about him to me. And maybe he's, it's been 7 years. He's a dad now. He's been in his hometown around his family for a long, long time. People change, people grow. Maybe this is he's he's still mostly the same person, but
Yeah.
to be able to do that, I think takes a lot of self-assuredness,
Yeah.
so self-confidence.
That's
So
true.
maybe he also has the self-confidence if it breaks down there to say, I could be this guy again on Long Island too. And then,
Mm.
what if we were, if to be able to I think ultimately if he is a free agent, he's 35 years old, he's gonna where can I go to win? I don't know if that's gonna be the island next summer.
Right.
But failing all that, if and if the whatever, it could be the ultimate heel turn, and he ends up with the Rangers or the
Oh my
Devils or
God.
whoever. But then everybody can hate it. Then the
Right.
mutual hate society.
Sure.
Mike will be the happiest person if he signs a 1 year deal with the Rangers, because then he can hate him
I can
even more.
consolidate my fronts. It becomes
Yeah.
a war. It goes from a war on 3 fronts to a war on 2 fronts.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or the
Exactly.
Penguins. I could see the Penguins too. He's
Oh,
on
No,
the same thing, yeah.
believe me, if he goes to the Penguins, then he must have hit his head, because I don't even know. I was joking with somebody and said, "Is he going to sign an extension before Crosby does?" And the person who's might actually know what's going on, it's like, could happen. And I'm like, come on. So maybe the Islanders should be setting their sights on Sid instead
Wow.
of
Oh my God! If
Clark.
here's the thing: if Sidney Crosby ever becomes an Islander, I told you guys that in our group chat that if Tavares comes back, I was going to buy each of us a season ticket, and there's like 6 people in it. And if Crosby comes back, and if Crosby comes to the island to play here, well, we can bump that to a suite. I'll get us like one of those corporate, the playbook
Right.
suite that you can settle that. I'll outbid any company
Yeah.
on Long Island for that.
That's really funny.
One thing I wanted to just bring up about the faces changing here is I was watching I don't know if it was like Isles then someone on Twitter. I was just watching some old games or whatever, and there was a goal scored by Ryan Pulock very late against Detroit to tie a game in that Doug Waite season. And it's so strange to see Matt Barzal on the ice with John Tavares. There's just something weird about it, It's just like very. Like, I always kind of compartmentalize those two players like away from one another. But yeah, just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time today watching highlights from the Rangers Lightning series from 2 years, 2022, which was a good way to spend an afternoon while Isla was napping. I was like, I just got to watch this. And then I was watching some old Islander highlights as well. And that was one of them, thinking like, what is going on? Seeing these two on, like, it's just weird seeing like a hockey hug between, it was Barzal, Pulock, Tavares. God, who else was on the ice at the time? I don't even remember.
That crazy game where they won like 7-6 in overtime, like the Brock Nelson?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, where they scored the 4 power play goals.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it was that one. I think it was a different one. Pulock scored with like less than a minute
left. The greatest acting job by Cal Clutterbuck on that major slash to Tyler Bertuzzi, where it looked like he chopped his leg off and barely made contact with him. Now we got to wonder if Cal Clutterbuck is, if he goes somewhere else, does he want to come back for a reunion, and we'll have to do the same show in next summer.
Yes.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I got to say, like, I was very skeptical when you were like, I think this could happen. And I was like, come on. But you made the case. And I got to say, I mean, the thing I don't like about it is that it basically requires the Islanders to have a terrible season, and B, trade Nelson and Pajot. Two guys. Now, listen, Pajot has been on the trade block before. We've talked about this before. Nobody wants to see the guy traded, but he just kind of makes sense in a lot of ways. And so I think we're kind of braced for that. Nelson is a little bit more divisive. People don't want to see him go. People think that they can get a lot for him. And so in the event that either of those two guys leaves and opens the door for, Tavares to come back and, play a third C role, which I think you're right, he would probably do okay. Then I wonder if it becomes like, well, not only did you leave in the first place and cause all of this distress and do this in a way that made us all mad, but now you're going to come back and replace a guy who we all like, whether it's Pajot or Nelson. Like, and it's funny because the way you painted the picture, you mentioned Chara before, it reminded me of the Zach Parise signing, where like Parisi came here, I mean, his dad's connection to the Islanders is long. We talked to, at length about how they should have drafted him. They didn't. He signed here, and it was like, we've all hailed this conquering hero. This guy finally is here, and he played great. And it's like, I feel like if we're kind of setting up John Tavares to play that same part, I don't know if it's really going to work that way. But like you said, I mean, the door, you've cracked the door open a little bit. Like, I will say that it is open. But however, I do feel the same as Mike, which is that some people may cheer him. Some people might be like, you know what, big enough dude. He changed, like you said. People grow, people change. 7 years is a long time, and I could change too. I don't know if I'm one of those people.
I think we'd actually, if he came back, I think we'd be in the minority. Like right now, we're in the majority, right? Like we're part. Like most Islander fans still want John Tavares to be pummeled every time he comes into the rink. But if he does come back, I think it would actually flip, where we'd look like the lunatics that we portray the people that are portraying us as lunatics. It would really flip a lot of scripts around if he did come back. I will also say the one thing I would absolutely sign up, be happy to see, is if he does not have a contract late into next year, and we're not the only ones talking about this. It's it becomes fodder for whatever 32 Thoughts is going to become without Jeff Marek, with like Friedman and what all those other like rumor slinging shows. Like it'll come up if he's not signed. I'm hoping, especially I don't know if the Islanders play the Leafs later in the year, but if he's not signed by the time that they play again, they play their last game of the year, someone will bring it up, and it'll be fun fodder to think about and to watch the usual suspects around the Maple Leafs kind of brainworms themselves into and feel offended that Islander fans are like, maybe he's gonna come back. Wouldn't that be something?
That's the thing that you have to hang your hat on here, and will give you positive vibes that if that scenario is about to take place, how the Toronto media will just turn itself inside out with disbelief that he would want to go back to the place where they've staunchly defended his honor every time he goes back. Imagine what John Tory would feel like if he went back to Long Island after he dedicated an entire day in the city of Toronto for John after the first time he went back, where he just he'd pound his desk in his big house. He'd just be like, I can't believe we laid out the whole red carpet for this guy because those dipshits in suburban New York were mean to him, and now he's running back there to him.
Right.
So that is another. That's
true.
That to me that's how you get the fans on board.
Yes,
that's true. That makes sense.
It would be so much fun
in the Canadian media environment and around hockey who still don't get why the fans here boo and think that it shouldn't exist, because the Islanders essentially shouldn't exist in their mind because they're not important enough the way that the Leafs are. Right. That if someone prioritized that scenario, returning to a team that's not and leaving the Leafs, that would be worth it, honestly. I think for you guys.
I was going to say, Nat, you've just sold me on this idea. Now you've just said, like, this is the selling point now. Watching Myrtle and Luke Fox Jukebox and the whole Leafs industrial complex.
It would go way higher than that.
I can imagine.
I think even Kyprios and the big guns would really be questioning themselves quite a bit. But
it'd be amazing.
That's the upshot
of it all.
This is the ultimate 15 tweet thread where you say thread with the little thread emoji. By whenever this airs, within 48 hours, he will sign an extension. So
I know.
We'll have this conversation for posterity, but that'll probably be about it.
Right. Man, that
now I'm
gonna
be just imagining these
God.
threads and God.
What I like is that, like Mike said, like the longer it goes that he doesn't have a contract, some of those guys are going to be thinking about this. So some of them are going to be like talking about it and thinking about it, and it's going to bother them enough that they would probably, maybe they might just have a thread anyway, even if it doesn't happen. They might just start putting out threads and just be like, because I mean, these guys especially, like, they just love kickstart stuff. But anyway, Art, this has been fascinating as always. We don't bother you that often during the summer, but we felt this was a good reason to, and we're gracious that you. I mean, this time you offered. You were like, you got to have me on the show because I got this idea. So we really appreciate it. And again, everybody out there, seriously, go buy The Snap by Elizabeth Staple. It's out anywhere. Buy it, listen to it, read it. I can't wait to read it myself. I'm sure it's terrific. It sounds awesome. And good luck. We'll tell Beth we said good luck. Anything you got cooking? I mean, we still got a few weeks before you probably have to get stuff going on, but you've already done a couple of mailbags and stuff over at The Athletic. Anything you got cooking coming up prior to the season?
No, just, sniffing around, trying to figure out where exactly, if anywhere, Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck will be playing
Yeah.
in a month or so. And no, it's I had my chat with Lou, however that was a couple weeks ago, very enlightening. The
Yeah.
last question I asked him, which I did not throw into the mailbag, was how come he didn't get an invite to the wedding of the century with Brian Pollock? And it was quiet on the phone, and all he said was, "How do you know I wasn't there?"
Oh, see, that's a guy who has a sense of humor. That's the
Yeah.
thing
He's
people don't understand. Lou has a
he
sense of humor.
absolutely does. I think anybody who talks to him for more than a few minutes knows that he has a fantastic sense of humor.
Oh
So
god,
Yes.
he's the best.
That's amazing. That's
Uh,
amazing. Thank
But
you
yeah,
so
before
much.
before you go though, I do. If you were to handicap Martin and Clutterbuck, you don't have to put specifics on it. Islanders retire, like don't done like Bailey style, or another team. What would you put the odds for each of those?
I think Cal's gonna get. I don't know if he's gonna get a contract. Maybe he'll get like a wink, wink tryout, and you'll make the team somewhere. I don't know where that is,
Yeah,
honestly.
I don't know any. I feel like nobody has room.
I mean, I was going to say the Leafs, but they're all backed up. Like they're
Yeah.
capped up.
It's
So
like-
they're
I think there's probably some not so great teams that wouldn't mind having a guy like that with his experience and the way that he plays and yada yada. But I think he's got a big family. They're committed to staying here, so I think you can kind of rule out some far flung places. So I don't know. I mean, I could see Jersey maybe. They're the team that's always in need of good veteran guys. It's close by.
Yeah.
I think that would sting a little bit. And with Martin, I don't know. I think he wants to play. I don't. This might be a situation where kind of like with Josh Bailey. Like I don't know if anybody really has a need for him right now. But we'll see. He's holding his youth hockey camp at the Islanders practice facility this coming week here, so maybe he'll have an announcement to make. He's still, to my mind, if he wanted to hang him up, the word ambassador to me describes him to a T. So I think if he wanted to step into that role where he's
Johnny Boychuk.
kinda-
Him and
Yeah, I
imagine
mean,
him and
maybe
Boychuk together.
doing a little bit of player development and a lot of outreach on Long Island and in the city, doing media stuff with his father, and like he's the ultimate Long Island guy. So I wonder if he finds a job or if he has to go somewhere and try out how much he'll put into it, when the alternative might be stay here and he could be mayor of Manhasset at some point. Who knows?
coming to WFAN, Matty Martz and Boomer in the Morning.
Exactly.
I could see that happening too. So, Art, this has been fascinating. You've changed minds here. We'll see what happens. And again, if by the time you listen to this, John Tavares has already signed with an extension with the Leafs, well, we thank you for spending the last 30 some odd minutes with us listening to this. It was a great conversation to be had. And we're just kind of spitballing again. It's August, man. Come on. We got a few weeks before the season starts. But thank you very much, Art. And thanks everybody for listening. And we will talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye.